Weather is the best. The people are the best.
When your neighborhood is a coveted slice of paradise,
This is a life in America.
some who live here don't want to share it.
Hey! You have no business being here!
What are you doing?
Everybody eventually became scared of him.
And everyone becomes the enemy.
We're done.
When you have that level of fear/concern, that takes an emotional toll on you.
I thought when I saw all this,
Are you okay?
that this is not good. This is not going to end well. And then all hell broke loose.
Oh my God. That was off all charts.
Further position! Move back!
Bye, Daddy.
This isn't over. Squeeze the trigger whenever you're ready.
Just minutes from the sands of Waikiki Beach, the beautiful Diamond Head neighborhood radiates Hawaii's warm and generous nature.
It's like paradise, you know, everyone's happy because it's full of blue skies and we're right by the ocean. In Hawaii, you know, there is the aloha spirit. Everyone will care for each other. The community spirit is really nice.
When you walk down the street, you always see someone you know. You're always invited for a cocktail on the side. We're very, very close. It's a place that you really love to be in.
Hibiscus Drive is home to retired university librarian Lois Kane. She's remained very active since her husband's passing.
Lois was probably the most outgoing, extroverted, fun, bubbly person I've ever met. Super, super bright and super energetic.
She just adored her friends, and she was very kind, almost to a fault, because she would meet people on the street and bring them home and give them a place to live for months at a time. That's how she was. She's very generous.
Very nice. I put here, yes?
No one benefits more from Lois's warmth and hospitality than Yaroslav Hanel, known to everyone as Yarda. Yarda's the caretaker of the condominiums where Lois used to live. When Yarda needed to move, Lois welcomed him with open arms.
Yarda came and lived with her downstairs, and she lived upstairs.
Yarda resides at Lois's house rent-free. In return, he works on her home and garden.
They had a very strong relationship. I think she looked at him more like a son than anything else. And he helped her. He took care of her. I mean, he really maintained the house.
Lois's tenant endears himself to everyone he meets.
Hey, Jen! Hey! I got something for you!
Like Lois's neighbor across the street, Jen Tima.
This is for you and your family to plant at home.
He did a lot of nice things for the neighbors for many years.
Thank you, and thank you for fixing the sink.
Oh, my pleasure, of course.
If anybody needed help around the house, he was this big, strong guy who could fix things. They liked him a lot because everywhere I went with him, people were like, "Hey, Yarda." It was almost, they adored him.
She's very nice. Very nice.
Lois's next-door neighbor is real estate broker Warren Daniel.
Hey, Yarda.
Warren had terrific relationships with all his neighbors.
Hi, Lois. Got your mail again.
He would just be the good neighbor and help out.
Thank you.
Oh, don't forget the barbecue tomorrow, Warren.
You betcha.
When Diamond Head neighbors aren't helping out, they're hanging out.
You're up?
This is a life in America.
Yarda would barbecue, and he'd stand there all day long barbecuing and talking to people. He was the best, and it was really a lovely, lovely time. Those are wonderful memories for me.
But dark times are about to engulf this close community.
No, take this! What are you doing? What?
Chiropractor Janice Morrow, one of Lois's longtime friends, is staying with her while on vacation from Los Angeles.
Hey, cheers! I want to get a selfie. Yes, okay.
Every break, pretty much, I went back and I stayed with her for 2 to 3 weeks at a time.
Say cheese.
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 Janice looked at Lois like a second mom.
Let's go see Yarda.
Yeah, I want a hot dog this time.
Ah, hello,
I love the hat.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Very, very
You're
much.
looking good. I want a picture.
No picture.
Oh, come on, just
no
one.
photo.
Come on.
A simple request triggers a strange outburst.
No.
Don't be shy.
No, I said no photo. I meant it.
Okay.
He didn't like his picture taken at all. He'd go ballistic if you tried. He was really private.
Give me the phone.
Yeah.
I make a picture of you.
Okay.
It's good, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. What's wrong with him?
I've never seen him like this. That was a nice party.
It was. I salute you, Yarda, king of the grill.
Thank you very much.
Yarda, I said no smoking.
Oh.
Put it away.
I'm sorry.
Even here in paradise, things can suddenly fall apart.
Hello?
Lois's mother got sick. She was in her 90s.
What hospital is she in?
And as she was progressively getting worse,
It's my mom.
Lois's mother lives in San Diego.
she adored her mom.
There's no question. Lois has to go to her immediately.
You go. I take care of everything.
Thank you, Yarda.
She flies back to the mainland with no idea how long she'll be gone.
So Lois moved to San Diego. I think she expected to be there about 6 months to a year.
With his landlord away and Janice now back home in L.A., Yarda's alone and in charge of the house.
She liked knowing that he was there because he could, take care of the yard, send her mail, or if anything came up, he could just take care of it.
As months go by, Yarda's caretaking begins to extend beyond the house to the entire neighborhood, especially when he thinks it's being invaded.
Tourists would walk from Waikiki and they're trying to get to the lookout overlooking this Diamond Head, all the surf below. So there's always these tourists walking through the neighborhood.
Hey! What are you doing? What?
In Yarda's mind, I believe he visualized himself as the neighborhood watchman who was going to protect the entire neighborhood from strangers.
No!
And especially tourists.
Erase them now!
He would walk up to the tourists and demand that they erase those photographs.
Go! They're watching us! Go! Go! Now!
Friend and close neighbor Stephanie Sophos tries to help.
Is everything okay, Yarda?
I said, why are you doing that? They're not hurting you. Why are you doing that?
Yarda gives an alarming answer.
He said, they're KGB. They're following me. They're watching me.
The KGB is watching every move I make.
Yarda, they're just tourists.
To the residents of Diamond Head, the notion of KGB spies is absurd, but Yarda has a dramatic history.
You have to understand Yarda in that he was born in the Czech Republic and he went into the Czech army. He didn't want to be in the communist country anymore and he escaped. And he went to Germany and asked for asylum to America.
In his adopted country, the expat remains haunted by old ghosts.
You have to calm down.
And there's something else stoking his anger.
I lost my job at the condo.
What? Oh, I'm so sorry.
He was fired from that job because he got very gruff with a couple of owners. He was very rude. He was just rah, 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 rah. He would just bark to them in his rough English. And people didn't like that and they fired him.
The KGB is behind this too. I know it.
There's no way to convince Yarda he's not being monitored.
He was really getting a little bit sketchy, but it was manageable. I said, Yarda, no one's here to hurt you. No one cares.
As time goes on, the handyman throws himself deeper into his work on Lois's home.
He didn't have a job. He was home all day. It was a historic house, so it needed a lot of work.
Throughout it all, Yarda becomes increasingly obsessed with keeping trespassers out of the neighborhood.
Hey! You have no business being here!
He would approach cars with people just parked on the street
Hey!
and pretty much being aggressive and asking, like, what are they doing there?
You have no business here! You go! You go! You go! I say you go! You have no business here!
Yarda, come on, that's my electrician.
I have no choice!
The residents of Diamond Head wonder if Yarda could be afflicted with PTSD from his time in the Czech army. But whatever is fueling his paranoia, this once happy community is about to become a living hell.
So that's when it really went south. Everybody eventually became scared of him.
Leave us alone, please.
You go away!
With Lois Kane far from her Honolulu home, Yarda Hanel's paranoia grows more intense.
He put cameras up. He thought people were spying on him. There were cameras on the porch, down the driveway, up to the side stairs through the kitchen. There was cameras there. There was cameras at the bottom of the driveway. He had cameras pointed everywhere.
You can imagine him sitting in his man cave downstairs, watching these cameras, waiting for them to come at him.
Yarda would stay at home and watch his security cameras. I thought when I saw all this that, oh, this is not good. This is not going to end well.
Yarda's not just keeping watch on tourists passing through. For some inexplicable reason, he has now set his sights on his own neighbors, like Warren Daniel, right next door.
Yarda, what are you doing?
There was a particular incident when Warren said that Yarda was spying on him.
I see you.
Their houses were super close, so if I was Warren, I wouldn't want all these cameras pointed at me.
I'm asking you to please just turn your cameras away from my house.
No! It is necessary. You understand?
I have young daughters.
And I have to monitor my property. You see? You are on my side now!
The longer he stayed at Lois's, he became kind of territorial, like it was his house. He could be very intimidating.
All too soon, the home's many cameras aren't enough to make Yarda feel safe. Now he needs to roam far and wide in search of threats.
He would have these Google glasses on and then these big sunglasses in front of them to kind of hide them. But you can see him like managing it, taking video. It was really odd to see Yarda walking around the neighborhood like that.
The former military man goes after any tourist strolling through these scenic streets.
Hey! Hey! Why are you spying here? You go away! Go away!
And he keeps building up his arsenal of gadgets.
It may be crazy. He'd have his GoPro either clipped to his shirt or a little mount on his hat or carrying it. He'd always have cameras on.
As tensions grow in the neighborhood,
Yes. Yes, of course, Lois.
Lois remains on the mainland, tending her ailing mother.
She just really wanted to take care of her mom, so Lois just ended up staying in San Diego to help.
Bye-bye, Lois. Bye-bye.
Even if Lois was here, it's unlikely she'd see a problem.
She would protect him, and when people criticized him, she would defend him no matter what.
But defending Yarda is going to get harder and harder. On one occasion, Warren Daniel finds some of his plants have been hacked to pieces.
I can tell you that Yarda didn't like his neighbors on both sides. He didn't like Warren Daniel, but that was between them.
To protect himself, Warren has started documenting Yarda's trail of harassment. But that turns out to be like throwing a match on gasoline.
How dare you take photos? No! No photos!
He really went crazy that Warren had come down and taken photos.
You do not take photos! My property! Give me that camera! You don't!
He ended up shoving Mr. Daniels into a tree.
Don't take pictures!
The neighborhood eccentric has just crossed a line. Yaroslav Hanel is charged with third-degree assault.
I don't know if they were provoking each other, but Warren said that Yarda pushed him, broke his shoulder.
He had been attacked. He had been confronted numerous times, destroyed plants, harassing workers. Then he filed a restraining order.
Warren's TRO, or temporary restraining order, states Yarda has to stay off his property and is not allowed to contact, threaten, or harass him. Yet even after the incident, Yarda still hasn't burned all his bridges.
I think the neighbors were more sympathetic toward Yarda because he was a caretaker living there. And Warren is a very successful real estate agent in town, and maybe people just felt like he was some rich guy in the neighborhood picking on Yarda.
Still in San Diego, Lois does not intervene.
She did feel bad for the neighbors, you know, that they were having to deal with all this. But here she is taking care of her mom. I think it was just so overwhelming for her.
Eventually, the assault charges against Yarda are dismissed. Everyone has to keep living side by side.
Come get the ball.
When Yarda brings new friend Butch into his life, neighbors hope he'll finally calm down.
He would go from morning to evening with that dog.
Oh, yeah.
They would play in the park, they'd be on the beach, they did everything together.
With Butch in the picture, Yarda seems happier than he has in ages. But he doesn't forget the neighbor who filed a restraining order against him.
All of a sudden, there's Yarda with his dog running right up to them. He'd throw the ball right by these people so the dog would run right up to them.
Yarda, leave us alone, please.
Yarda finds inventive ways to respect the letter, but not the spirit of the injunction.
One of the most egregious examples of Mr. Hanel's fixation on just harassing Mr. Daniels was he had this little platform and he put a barbecue on top of it and filled that barbecue with wet leaves and lighter fluid and would light it so that this billowing smoke would just come into the Daniels house, the property, and everything else.
Yarda, stop. This is intimidation.
It is perfectly legal.
So that's just one example of the kind of thing we had to go back to court for.
When Warren Daniel is granted amendments to his TRO, Yarda is incensed by the new restrictions.
And the judge basically said, you can't do this smoke. The dog must be under leash. Security cameras cannot be pointed at Warren's house, and then he cannot be filming with his own GoPro in the area in front of the houses.
Yarda keeps his distance from Warren and finds a new obsession in the neighborhood. Rebecca Atkinson.
I would always be walking down the street and I'd be texting or playing a game on my phone. He didn't like that I had a phone in my hand because he felt like that was me recording him. No one could have imagined this happening.
I'm begging you, leave me alone!
Rebecca Atkinson lives down the street from Yarda Hanel, but for reasons unknown, he suddenly considers her a security threat.
Becca's been there for about 20 years, as long as I have, and she was being watched by him.
You were taking photos of my house. Why?
I didn't. Can you stop, please?
No,
I'll call the police.
I don't care. I am not breaking the law.
So he just started videoing and taking pictures, and he started to put the camera right in front of my face. And Jen, who lives across the street, saw him, and she called out, "Yarda, what are you doing? She's your neighbor."
Yarda, hey, Rebecca lives here. Yarda, put that down, now.
She is KGB. She's watching my house.
No, she's not.
Yes, she is.
Yarda, she lives here.
No.
Yarda, come on.
I know this woman is KGB.
Yarda.
She's KGB.
No.
But he just kept doing it. I just kept trying to avoid him, but it was really difficult.
Please, I'm begging you. Leave me alone.
He was going up into her house taking pictures of her constantly.
I'm calling the police.
It became clear that I really needed the law on my side because I couldn't do anything.
It's my neighbor. He won't leave me alone. He's following me.
As a woman, I felt just horrible, and I just wondered, what is he doing with these pictures?
He's watching me right now, and I'm in my car.
Is he posting them all on his wall like a crazy person? What if he's like Xing out my eyes or my face, or he's just like being obsessed with me?
Bloody KGB.
People in the neighborhood are sympathetic to Rebecca, but not exactly supportive.
All the neighbors that I talked to, including Lois, they all kind of had the same thing about him being harmless. They just kind of accepted his behavior as very odd and not nice, and thinking it wouldn't go any further. So I actually moved towards getting a restraining order.
Yarda is careful in how he stalks Rebecca. He has never threatened or physically assaulted her, so the court denies her request to rein him in.
Taking my picture on a public sidewalk in public places was totally legal. But the judge and the attorneys had the idea of signing a gentleman's agreement that listed about 12 different things, and it included not walking on the sidewalk in front of each other's homes, not taking each other's pictures or video, basically staying away from each other.
Yarda signs the agreement, but he doesn't honor it. And Rebecca's nightmare just gets worse.
He would stand in the middle of the road so he wasn't on the sidewalk. Sometimes I just felt so defeated about it, I couldn't do anything about it.
Lois Kane's tenant remains the protector of all he surveys, whether the neighbors like it or not. In California, Lois's mother passes away, allowing Lois to finally return home to Honolulu, but not to any peace and quiet.
Please, you have to do something.
You don't know him like I do.
You have no idea what he's done. My daughters are afraid to leave the house.
I think she felt when they were complaining about Yarda that they were making more of it than it was.
Maybe if you left him alone?
I think that Lois felt that Warren was exacerbating the situation with Yarda by getting that restraining order.
That's a good boy.
The conflict is locked in stalemate. Then, Yarda is struck by tragedy. His beloved Butch dies. Utterly distraught, Yarda wants his best friend mourned and honored by the neighborhood.
He built the coffin for the dog, and he had the coffin and the dog on the front yard of the house so that people could go by and mourn his dog. That's how much he loved that dog.
Some say losing Butch was the final straw for Yarda.
Butch was the only thing keeping him in touch with reality. And after he died, he just went into solitude and darkness. And he got more and more dark.
I'm sorry. I really am.
Goodbye, my Butch.
And after the fourth day, he started to smell. And he wouldn't remove it, so Lois called the people who take animals, and they took the dog.
In the midst of Yarda's loss, Janice Morrow makes one of her yearly visits from the mainland.
He was such a good dog. You see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On this trip, Janice has more pressing concerns to discuss with her old friend.
I wanted to ask you something.
I was in a store that got robbed. I was held at gunpoint. I got scared and I started thinking maybe I should get a gun. And so I was asking him questions about guns.
What kind of gun should I get?
Maybe a shotgun. What do you think of this?
Heavy.
So he pulled out a few guns and he showed me he collected machetes.
And what do you think of this?
And then he pulled out a grenade. I thought it was strange. I was like, is that real?
Janice has no idea Yarda's stash of weapons is illegal.
These guns were not registered. Under the restraining order, he was prohibited under federal law from having a weapon.
Lois never mentioned, Yarda having guns or weapons or anything. So I don't think she ever even thought about it. She felt that he was harmless. She thought he was eccentric and, a little bit paranoid.
But for many neighbors, Yarda has long surpassed eccentric and become something much worse.
He started doing all these other random things to me, like chasing my car on foot.
Why are you spying here?
I never dreamed he would be this violent.
Hey!
We're done.
You are going to arrest me?
As Yarda Hanel's paranoia increases, the stress on his victims is unbearable.
My heart was pounding and I felt very violated, and I wasn't sure, how can you always avoid him if he's around the neighborhood too?
Warren couldn't even go check his mail without kind of walking a little side route there and peering around the corner to see if Yarda's hiding there. When you have that level of fear / concern / being freaked out by the strange man next door, where you can't get your mail without having a stressful occurrence every single time, that takes an emotional toll on you.
When Warren Daniels' temporary restraining order expires and Yarda shows no signs of letting up, he joins forces with Rebecca Atkinson.
We're just at a loss. And he said, okay, why don't we use the same attorney and let's work on this together.
Warren and Rebecca submit new filings, and the court grants both new temporary restraining orders.
And they finally gave me the TRO, so he would have to stay away from me. He wasn't allowed to have firearms. He wasn't allowed to take my picture or video anymore.
The courts can compel Yarda to change his ways, but they can't change his state of mind.
His behavior, if anything, just got more dark. He became more of a recluse. He just stayed in that house and he watched those cameras.
And now, there's something else stirring up this toxic mix.
Yarda had shoulder surgery for his rotator cuff, so he had a busted shoulder, and they were giving him painkillers. But he was also drinking. That's a bad combination, drinking and painkillers. You're in pain, you're drinking, you're giving some drugs, and you're angry.
Did you call 911?
I did.
Lashing out at his enemies, Yarda makes a series of drunken 911 calls, complaining about the Daniel family.
Over there. I just came from there, there's nobody there.
Pardon me?
I just came from there, there's nobody there.
Jerry, we checked the area.
We
went over there, we checked it, and it's fine.
You are going to arrest me?
Not necessarily.
Oh, well, go on.
He's gotten naked.
You are drunk right now. You are completely drunk right now. You have broken the law.
I broke the law?
So,
what kind of law?
Misuse of 911. So we're going to cite you
He kept calling 911 over and over again. And at that point, they arrested him for obstructing justice.
Once again, Lois rescues Yarda from trouble. Yet even this kind-hearted soul is starting to reach her limit.
She had even gone to court for him. It's so expensive and it's so time-consuming, and it was just draining her physically. Their relationship went south because she was just getting constant emails and calls and having to deal with it.
She was more concerned that some of the neighbors were threatening to sue her. She had the lawyers sending her letters that they were going to sue her and take her house if she didn't do something about Yarda.
In the midst of all this stress, Lois's home life gets even more complicated.
Hey, Lois.
Her friend Gisela King moves in with her son and husband while they're looking for a permanent home.
They asked many people in the neighborhood if they could live with them. No one else said yes except for Lois.
All right, let's go inside.
The Kings were living upstairs, Yarda was living downstairs, and Lois was reduced to one bedroom in her own house. And so she wanted to have her house back.
It just was escalating, more and more and more issues.
The breaking point for Lois is triggered by a minor incident.
She didn't like smoking at her house, and one time she was upstairs and she smelled smoke and she went down and told them to put a cigarette out.
I said no smoking, Yarda.
Whatever.
And then he just got another one and lit up again, like, you're not telling me what to do, F you. And that's when she said, that's it, you're out of here.
You have 30 days to move out. I mean it. You're gone.
Easy to say, not so easy to do. Yarda's departure date gets closer and closer. Everyone hopes it will bring peace back to the neighborhood.
Everybody thought he was moving out because he had been moving boxes. So Lois really thought he was going to leave.
But when moving day arrives, Lois finds his living area barricaded shut.
And he completely locked her out. So that just turned into a war.
Yarda!
Go away! I'm not leaving!
I'll evict you. Do you want that?
You want to kick me out? Do it!
She was angry and frustrated.
Pushed to her limit, Lois finally hires an eviction lawyer. When Janice Morrow flies in from California 2 weeks later, Yarda is still bunkered in.
Lois?
And now, he's locked Lois out of her basement office.
Easy.
And she was in the process of crawling through the window, and I was like, what's going on?
Gosh, are you okay? Are you? Yes. Thank you.
It was a horrific situation. I thought she'd get hurt with her bad heart, that she'd fall, break a hip, or the window would slam on her, or that basically he'd trap her.
The courts grant Lois a hearing in her eviction request, and Yarda is ordered to appear before a magistrate.
Are you sure that he's gonna go? He has nowhere to live.
I said, he's up to something. He doesn't have any place to go. He's going to be homeless.
I'm sure. He'll go.
He was getting desperate. And when people are desperate, they do desperate things. I said, I'm worried about you.
It'll be fine.
Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. It's all taken care of. Everything will be fine.
But Lois is dead wrong. It's a quiet Sunday morning on Hibiscus Drive.
I usually walk the dogs between 7 and 8 in the morning. That particular day was so cool, and it was so comfortable, and the bed was so cozy, I just didn't want to get out of bed.
I left the house at 8:30. I walked down to Waikiki, went to do yoga.
As usual, Yarda is at his monitoring station. and Lois is at home. Yarda's barricade is gone, and she heads down to the basement.
It probably was to do laundry. I mean, she had to do her laundry down there.
This will prove to be a tragic mistake.
Yarda? Yarda?
Something snapped in Yarda. Something snapped.
On this peaceful Sunday morning in Honolulu, upstairs tenant Gisela King hears a terrible sound coming from the basement of Lois Kane's home.
Gisela King heard some type of noise, like a scream or a fighting.
It was my house, too!
Yarda? She just had a bad feeling. She turned around and she heard like a gasp or something.
Then she hears again,
Lois?
Gisela has no idea that Yarda Hanel has brutally attacked Lois, and he has no plans to stop.
And then she stepped outside. She was 4 feet from the door, and she starts to call 911 on her phone. He stabs her in her left breast, in her stomach, and on her legs.
Please, someone! Help!
There was blood everywhere.
Oh, I'm here to help.
Then, a lucky break. Ian Felix, an Army veteran, happens to be walking by.
We'll take care of this, all right?
I saw Gisela was in the ground, and she's bleeding. She had a injury in the head. It was a big gash.
Stephanie Sophos and Gentima have also heard Gisela's screams.
So I immediately asked if anybody has a first aid, because I've been in combat. I have training for stopping bleeding and all that.
Who did this?
Yarda!
Where is he?
Back inside, Yarda resumes his horrific assault on his friend and protector.
And that's when the police officers started coming.
Honolulu PD officers Tiffany Enriquez and Kalik Kalama are thrust into the chaos.
Side officer.
They're walking directly into a trap.
He would have seen their every move because there were cameras everywhere.
Mr. Hanel!
Something just flipped the switch that day.
Let's talk!
He decided that was the day. He was gonna take everybody out with him.
Mr. Hanel!
All of a sudden you hear that boom. I will never forget that sound.
Both officers are struck at close range. Yarda again flees to the basement.
And then all hell broke loose. It became a war zone. Get down, get down, get down! Officer down, get down! Run! Take cover, take cover!
Enriquez and Kalama are pulled from the garden and rushed to hospital.
Warren immediately runs and gets the police attention to make sure they understand, hey, you guys just can't go down there because he's got security cameras everywhere.
Yarda may be cornered, but he still has one last deadly card to play.
At that point, I think he believed it was the end for him. And when the fire started, I hide behind the wall because I'm thinking Yarda is going to try and kill as many people as he can in a blaze of glory.
Hey, make sure you have a second way out in case this house goes up. Watch that left side of the house. The house is completely engulfed on the Mackay side. Mackay and Cocohead side, completely engulfed.
Oh my God.
Perimeter position. Pull back so you can see. Pull back so you can see if this guy leaves the house.
Next thing you know, the fire is going off and bullets are exploding everywhere, probably because Yarda had a stash of ammunition there that started blowing off constantly. With all these bullets going off, the firemen couldn't do their job.
It's getting intense.
Ma'am, I want you to go upstairs.
I'm going now. Okay, let me just...
Go up as high as you can. If somebody's at this house, go ahead and ask them to come in here.
Okay.
It just was shocking, and I couldn't understand why the fire trucks weren't coming in. But then I realized they're still an active shooter. Their lives are at risk.
They're still looking for the shooter.
Yeah.
Soon, 7 houses are ablaze, triggering a neighborhood evacuation. Janice Morrow learns something has happened at her friend's home, but is unsure what's going on.
So I called a friend and said, "Is that Lois's house?" And she said, "Yes, we're all at the park. It is Lois's house. Yarda burned down her house, and no one has seen Lois." So I just kind of broke. I just felt in my heart at that moment, like I just knew right away she was dead.
When finally cleared to go in, firefighters confront a terrifying inferno. The devastation is beyond belief. The remains of Lois Kane are found in her charred basement. Yarda Hanel's remains are also recovered. Gisela King survives his frightening attack. But officers Tiffany Enriquez and Khalid Kalama die from their wounds.
God bless those 2 officers that died for us. They came to help us, and they gave the ultimate sacrifice.
Lois was very, very loving, and I know she'd be devastated to know that, these police officers were killed in everyone's homes, and I know she'd be sorry that she didn't act sooner, but might have just been fear, just 100% fear.
I called up Warren to check on how he was doing, and he said, my house is gone and all my possessions, but it's nothing compared to these families of these officers. Dave, it's crazy. It's just crazy.
I'm very lucky that my house was okay and I was okay. And, I've since seen my neighbors that are starting the rebuild process. So that's starting to happen, which is nice to see.
We'll never bring back people, and we'll never bring back what we loved, which was an innocence of having all of us together and trusting each other.